Okay, so for this next video lecture, so we will be discussing about the principal contents of an audit engagement letter. So by the way, please take note that audit engagement letter should be done and signed in the pre-engagement procedures before the audit will start. So because audit engagement letter is also a signal where the auditor has already accepted the audit engagement. So this will set the rules, regulation, terms, and conditions between the auditor and the client. So this is done so that any misunderstanding will be avoided during the conduct of the audit proper. Okay, so what are the contents of our audit engagement letter? So the form and content of engagement letters may vary for each client, but generally they include the following items. Of course, first, the objective of the audit of the FS. So why do they want to seek the services of the auditor to audit their FS? It should be stated also in the engagement letter. Another is the responsibility of the management for the financial statement. So we have mentioned this before in our previous video lecture during the pre-engagement procedures, where the management is responsible to prepare the FS in accordance with PFRS, as well as to establish internal controls that will prevent the misstatement in the preparation of their FS, whether due to fraud or error. So these are some of the most important responsibilities of the management. Okay, another is in the engagement letter, so the scope of the audit, which includes reference to the applicable legislation, regulations, or pronouncements of the professional bodies to which the auditor adheres should also be included, because this will serve as a guide for the auditor in performing the audit procedures. Okay. Another is it will also include the form of any reports or other communication results of the engagement. Okay, so this will be a reference as well why maybe the auditor have accepted the audit engagement with the client. Okay, another is the fact that because the test, nature, and other inherent limitations of the audit, together with the inherent limitations of the internal control, there is an avoidable risk that even some material misstatement may even be undiscovered. So here, this is like a waiver of the auditor related to the audit risk, where because of the inherent limitations that cannot be reduced, minimized, or be eliminated, there might be some unavoidable risk, okay, that even material misstatements may be undiscovered. Okay, so this statement will be included so that it will be clear with both parties that in this case, the auditor will only provide a reasonable assurance, meaning to say high assurance but not absolute. So that is why there might be an avoidable risk that some material misstatement may remain undiscovered even if it has undergone audit. So another content is unrestricted access to whatever records, documents, and other information requested in connection with the audit. So this is on the part of the management, where their responsibility is to give access to the auditor any documents that he may request or information that is related to the preparation of the financial statements, even inquiries or observation from the people within the entity. Okay, so they must provide access to all of this information to the auditor in order for him to collect or gather appropriate and sufficient audit evidence to support his opinion. Okay, another is the management responsibilities, okay, for establishing and maintaining effective internal control. So we mentioned that a while ago. Another is the arrangement regarding the planning and performance of the audit. So this is how the auditor will do the audit procedures and the scope and its extent. So another content is the expectation of receiving from the management a written confirmation concerning representations made in connection with the audits, because from time to time it is also necessary for the auditor to, for example, access certain or additional information that might have not been considered during the pre-engagement or during the or in the engagement letter. So this might also allow him to gather evidence in such data or records as well. Okay, so another content is request for the client to confirm the terms of engagement by acknowledging the receipt that they have received this engagement letter and that they have signed and agreed on the terms and conditions written therein. Okay, so here, aside from those general contents, the auditor may also wish to include the following, okay, items in the engagement letter. So the first is a description of any other letters or reports the auditor will expect to issue during the conduct of the audit to the client. Okay. Another is the basis on which the fees are computed and any billing arrangements. So this is also important. Okay. Another is the arrangement those are the things which he may also include. Another is, when relevant, the following points could also be included as well. So the arrangement concerning the involvement of other auditors or experts in some aspects of the audit where the auditor is not an expert. Okay, so in this case, he might consider the work of an expert, which will be discussed in the next module. Okay, this is to help him understand the complex nature of the business entity or its operations. Okay, so another is arrangements concerning the involvement of the internal auditors and other client staff. So this is related to the responsibility of the management to give access to the auditor, okay, to inquire or observe from the people within the entity to gather appropriate and sufficient audit evidence. Another is the arrangement to be made with the predecessor auditor, if any, in the case of initial audit. Okay, so the communication also permitted between the predecessor and successor auditor should be included as well in the audit engagement letter. Another is any restriction of the auditor's liability when such possibility exists, or a reference to any future agreements between the auditor and the client. Okay, so here, what about for the audits of components? So when the auditor of the parent entity is also the auditor of the subsidiary. So in this case, we have here two separate entity. However, they are related because one party is the parent, okay, and the other is the subsidiary. The parent here entity has the majority, okay, of the ownership over that of the subsidiary, okay, or branch or division or component. So here, although they are different, considered to be different entity, but their auditor is still the same. So here, the factors that influence the decision whether to send a separate engagement letter for the subsidiary or to the parent, okay, for the following. Number one, who appoints the auditor? Okay, so is it the parent appoints the auditor for the subsidiary or vice versa and so on? Or whether a separate auditor's report should be issued for each component. Okay, for example, the same auditor but different entity. So the report will only be for the whole, meaning to say one report, or whether to separate, okay, the auditor's report for the parent and the subsidiary, and other legal requirements. Okay, another is the extent of any work performed by other auditors that may be involved, should also be considered. The degree of ownership by the parent, okay, so should be disclosed as well. The degree of independence of the components management, meaning to say, how do they manage the operations? Is it still under the parent, or do they have the capacity also? Okay, so those are for the principal components of an audit engagement letter.